Welcome to Eternal Light. I'm truly delighted that you are watching this video, and I hope you'll stay with me until the end as we explore profound truths about love, relationships, and the workings of God in our lives. The world we live in is full of masks, layers of pretense, and games of deception that often go unnoticed, and sometimes we ourselves become part of this performance. Yet, amidst it all, there is one eternal truth that cannot be hidden. God is not blind. He sees deep into the human soul, no matter how much we try to cover it up. Throughout the journey of life, people are frequently confronted with the pain of false relationships. There are those who draw near only to exploit, manipulate, or fulfill their own agendas, with no regard for the emotions or integrity of others. They may appear sweet and kind, but beneath the surface, they can be opportunists, takers, not givers. This is an inevitable part of the world we live in. But in the midst of this darkness and deceit, we must remember, while people may deceive one another, God always sees everything. He sees the motives, the hidden thoughts of the heart, and He is never fooled by the masks we wear. In life, things don't always go the way we want, especially in relationships, careers, and spiritual matters. Just like the stories in the Bible, where individuals faced unending trials to prove their loyalty and trust in God. One thing I want to share with you today is how God reveals the true nature of those around us, through circumstances, through success and failure, and through our personal spiritual journey. Let us recall the story of Joseph in the Old Testament. Joseph was deeply loved by his father, and because of this, his brothers became jealous and betrayed him. They sold him into slavery, and for many years, Joseph endured immense hardships. But in all of this, God never abandoned him. God used what seemed like painful circumstances to reveal the true nature of the people around him. First, Joseph's brothers, the very ones who betrayed him, eventually bowed before him and realized the significance of his role in God's plan. Through these trials, Joseph came to understand something crucial. God uses circumstances to unveil deep truths about human greed, envy, and lack of faith, while also revealing His own patience and unconditional love for those who remain faithful to Him. Let us continue to uncover the 7 ways in which God reveals the true character of people around us. First, He uses circumstances. Difficult situations can draw out the true nature of a person. When faced with pain, trials, or injustice, people often can't hide their genuine emotions and thoughts. God knows that through trials, what lies hidden in the heart will be exposed. It is in these hard times that we see the true qualities of others, sometimes selfishness, sometimes patience, and sometimes loyalty. Second, God uses success. Success can be a double-edged sword. It can make people arrogant, self-satisfied, and dismissive of others. Those who attain success may forget their core values and ignore the fact that every blessing comes from God. But through success, God also reveals deeper truths about gratitude, humility, and the ability to share blessings with others. Third, God uses failure to reveal the truth about a person. Failure can make someone feel weak, lost, and at times even lead to despair. Yet it is often through failure that God highlights profound lessons in humility, patience, and dependence on Him. Failure is not the end. It's an opportunity to discover truths about ourselves and the eternal values God has placed within us. Fourth, love is another powerful instrument God uses to unveil the true nature of people. In love, we witness sincerity, sacrifice, and loyalty. But love can also be a means of testing and exposing motives. The closest relationships, where we are most vulnerable, are often the clearest mirrors of a person's true character. Love, therefore, becomes a beautiful tool through which God reveals truth about those around us. Through the stories and examples in the Bible, we see that God never allows us to walk in darkness without His guiding light. He uses circumstances, success, failure, love, and many other means to illuminate the true nature of people. In every trial, we learn that while man may deceive man, God always sees what is hidden. So stay with me throughout this video as we continue to explore how God reveals truth in our lives. I believe that once we understand this, we will live stronger, more resilient lives, full of trust in God. Let's continue this journey together and never forget that He always sees what we cannot. Part 1. Through trials, Fire tests gold, trials test the heart. This world, no matter how bright and glittering it appears on the surface, is never short of painful and challenging trials. Just as in the Bible, when God looks into a person's heart, he does not see merely the outward appearance, but the true essence within. Trials are not accidents or punishments. Rather, they are part of a greater plan that God has for us. It is in those very moments of trial, when everything around us begins to fall apart, that the true nature of relationships becomes most visible. Just as the famous biblical saying goes, fire tests gold and trials test the heart. Trials are not merely a test of strength or endurance. They are divine examinations, opportunities for God to illuminate our souls and the nature of our relationships. When a person faces suffering or loss, those around them reveal their true selves. Genuine friends will remain by your side, while the fake ones will walk away. Life experience, especially the stories in the Bible, has made this very clear. Consider the story of Job in the Old Testament. Job was a righteous man, living a peaceful and prosperous life, but in just a brief moment, everything he had was taken from him. His loss was not just about property or children, but about the steadfastness of his faith. In his darkest moments, as Job sat among the ashes, his friends came to visit. But instead of offering comfort and empathy, they condemned him, insisting he must have sinned to deserve such suffering. These friends, though appearing in the name of comfort, exposed their hypocrisy when faced with Job's pain. Job was not only a victim of material loss, but also of false relationships, those who used his vulnerability to express their own ego and self-righteousness. Through trials, the essence of a person is revealed, no matter how much they try to conceal it. When Job was struck by misfortune and deep sorrow, his friendships were put to the test. Instead of standing with him in his grief, his friends used disappointment and judgment to validate their own beliefs. God used the trial to reveal a vital truth. While humans may deceive and hide their nature, suffering unveils the lies. Job wasn't the only one being tested. His friends also revealed their true colors. They might have been companions in prosperity, but in suffering, they became adversaries. This reality is not limited to the Bible. It is mirrored in our modern lives. Trials are the very moments when the true nature of people is exposed. Those whom we believe to be friends or loyal companions are sometimes the first to abandon us when things get tough. Take Oprah Winfrey, for example, a woman who has endured countless challenges in her life. When she was starting to build her career, many people surrounded her, but only during her toughest and most turbulent moments did the ones who truly loved her come into focus. Those she trusted, whom she considered close friends, gradually drifted away when she was no longer who they wanted her to be. Only through hardship did she realize that those relationships weren't genuine friendships, but superficial bonds driven by personal gain. In another story, Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple, also went through such trials. After being ousted from the very company he built, Jobs faced a tremendous failure. But in that moment, he began to realize who truly remained loyal, who stayed only during the good times, and who could stand firm in adversity. Upon returning to Apple and elevating it to new heights, Jobs never forgot the lessons he learned through that season. The trials helped him understand that not everyone can endure difficulty, and that sometimes only in pain do we see who truly loves us and who was just a passing presence in our lives. But trials are not only conditions that expose the nature of those around us. They are also opportunities for us to look within ourselves. When faced with hardship, we clearly see whether we are truly loyal to God and to our loved ones, or whether we allow ourselves to be tempted by adversity and abandon those most important to us. Trials give us a chance to understand more about our own nature, the strength of our faith, and our resilience in the face of life's storms. When everything collapses, when there's nothing left to cling to, it is the steadfastness of faith that allows us to stand firm and realize that no matter how much things change, God's love and faithfulness remain constant, and that is the source of infinite strength. Therefore, trials are not something to be feared or viewed as misfortune, but as an essential part of our spiritual journey. Like Job, Oprah Winfrey, or Steve Jobs, each of us must go through trials to see more clearly the nature of those around us and of ourselves. God uses trials not only to reveal human nature, but to lead us into greater maturity and stability in faith. It is precisely in those difficult moments that we learn. Even when everything changes, God's love and faithfulness remain the unshakable foundation that helps us overcome all things. Part 2. Through the misalignment in the mission, God calls you to go further than them. In a world full of conflict and entangled relationships, we often face challenges that don't just arise from external trials, but from the very relationships around us. One of the crucial lessons we learn in this life is that not everyone is meant to walk with us for the entire journey. Sometimes, separation is a sacred arrangement that God has ordained for each person. Those who do not share the same vision as us cannot help us fulfill the mission that God has entrusted to us. This may feel painful and difficult, but in hindsight, it is a divine clarity when God calls you to go further beyond the limits and frameworks previously set. On the spiritual journey, one of the breakthrough moments in a person's life is when they realize that some relationships are not just unhelpful, they can actually hinder them. When God calls you to walk on His path, not everyone will walk with you. Sometimes, the misalignment in mission and vision becomes the very reason you must separate from certain relationships. Just like in the story of Abraham and Lot, we see clearly that when God called Abraham to leave his homeland to follow His promise, part of that plan was for Abraham to separate from Lot, his nephew. Although they shared a close and loving relationship, the difference in vision and mission between them made the separation inevitable. Abraham, in his faith-filled journey, realized that God was calling him on a different path, one that Lot could not follow. This separation wasn't about personal or emotional division, but a sacred awareness of the difference in their missions. Abraham was called to become the father of a great nation, but without this separation, he could not receive the new promise from God. The separation wasn't a sign of failure, but a sign of obedience and preparation for the great things God intended to do through his life. Similarly, in modern life, the stories of public figures also reflect this truth vividly. We can clearly see that no matter how talented or successful you are, if you do not hold firm to your faith and loyalty to God, relationships that are misaligned in mission will pull you backward. Take Justin Bieber, one of the most famous music stars in the world. After years of prominence in the music industry, Justin Bieber underwent a major life transformation when he encountered and embraced the Christian faith. During this process, Bieber did not hesitate to cut off relationships that he realized were no longer beneficial to his faith and life. This was not merely a personal choice, but an act of obedience to God's calling. When he realized that in order to pursue the mission God had given him, he needed to separate from negative influences. Justin Bieber's transformation is proof that sometimes we must do difficult things to walk the path God has laid out for us. Just like Abraham, when someone meets God and recognizes the mission they have been given, they must face hard choices. People who do not share the same vision, relationships that do not build up faith, may become obstacles on your path. Likewise, in the life of Kanye West, after he encountered God and was transformed in his faith, Kanye decided to withdraw from the entertainment industry he had spent his life building. This was not just a personal decision, it was a divine act of obedience. Kanye realized that to fulfill the mission God had for him, he had to separate from relationships and environments that no longer aligned with his goals and faith vision. But as we look at these stories, we shouldn't only focus on the sacrifice or pain they endured in cutting off those relationships. In reality, through that separation, they didn't just lose unnecessary relationships, they received protection and guidance from God. It was by distancing themselves from negative influences that they were able to truly find themselves in the light of faith and the calling God had for them. This separation, as part of God's greater plan, opened a new door, a new opportunity for them to fulfill the mission they had been entrusted with. In each of our lives, such events are not uncommon. Every time we face misalignment in relationships, we can come to realize that some people simply cannot walk with us on this journey of faith. It's not because they are bad or we are better. It's because of the difference in mission and vision that God has assigned to each of us. And like Abraham, Justin Bieber, or Kanye West, we must learn to obey and trust that when God calls us to walk a separate path, it is part of divine wisdom. The relationships that no longer fit will be removed to make room for those that will truly help us grow in faith and fulfill the mission God has given us. So in moments of separation and distance, let us remember that obedience is not merely a personal trial. It is a step forward in our spiritual journey. Just as God called Abraham, and just as he led modern public figures to walk in faith, he is also calling each of us to follow our own unique path, the one he has already prepared. And in the process, despite the pain and sacrifice, we will come to realize that the separation is the very step of preparation for the great things God is about to do through our lives. Part 3. Through your advancement, success is a test of the heart. There is one thing we must clearly understand about the nature of success. It is not merely a reward for our efforts, but also a test of the heart. In the process of our advancement, as everything begins to shine more brightly, one element is inevitable: the envy of those around us, especially those who are insincere, those who are not truly happy for your success. Success has the power to bring out the brilliance in a person's character, but at the same time, it can also expose hypocrisy and jealousy, things we may not have recognized before. Especially in today's world, where fame and wealth are used to measure worth, your rise to a high position can become unbearable to many. Instead of celebrating with you, they look for ways to tear you down. The story of Joseph in the Bible is a vivid illustration of this truth. Joseph, who was blessed by God with the ability to interpret dreams, faced jealousy and betrayal from his own brothers. He did nothing wrong. On the contrary, Joseph was simply more loved and granted divine favor that his brothers did not receive. But it was precisely because of this favor that they could not bear him. Instead of rejoicing in Joseph's success, they chose to sell him away, driven solely by jealousy over the love he received from their father. Joseph was not just a victim of betrayal, but also a lesson on how success, especially when it is granted by God, can reveal the darkest corners of human emotions and the hidden shadows in the soul. Throughout the years of his imprisonment, Joseph never allowed the actions of his brothers to shake his faith. He remained steadfast in his loyalty to God, and in the end, God made him great, even placing him in a position to save both his family and his nation. This is clear evidence that advancement and success, though they may sometimes bring pain and loss, are also ways through which God shapes patience, forgiveness, and trust in him. Joseph showed magnanimity and forgiveness toward his brothers, and in all of those trials, he received blessings from the Lord, blessings that no one could take away. Today, in modern society, the story of Joseph still holds profound relevance. Celebrities and those who have achieved success in their careers or personal lives often face similar trials. They endure not only envy and criticism from the public, but also betrayal from those they once trusted. Taylor Swift, the globally famous and talented singer, is a prime example. Despite her brilliant career, she is not free from former friends and collaborators who speak ill of her behind her back. Her success and prominence have exposed the hatred and jealousy of some people who were once close friends but could not tolerate the level of success Taylor achieved. Instead of celebrating with her, they sought to undermine and destroy what she had built. Taylor Swift's story reflects a truth we cannot deny. Success can bring hostility from those we once believed were close to us. When you're at the top, envy can come from anywhere, and it's not merely a reaction from one individual. It reflects the deeper, darker conditions of others' hearts. However, just like Joseph, we cannot allow such envy to derail our path. Success, rather than being just a test for others, can also be an opportunity for us to challenge ourselves, to see how firmly we stand in the light of pride and hatred. Another example is Lady Gaga, the bold and creative singer who has clearly expressed her views on true friendship. She believes that true friends will always stand by you, rejoicing in your success, not those who use you while you're at the top and then turn away when you're struggling. This is a perspective worth reflecting on in our modern society. where envy and fake relationships can easily arise, especially when someone becomes successful. Lady Gaga emphasizes that true friends will always stay and support you, not use you to advance themselves. We can also learn from how Joseph faced envy and betrayal. Though he was sold off and imprisoned, Joseph never allowed his brother's jealousy to weaken his faith or character. He never let hatred strip away the love he still held for those who wronged him. When Joseph later met his brothers again, he didn't rebuke them, he forgave them. This shows a profound inner strength that only those who truly understand faith in God can possess. Success in life doesn't just come from personal effort, but also from loyalty and the ability to forgive those who have hurt us. In each of our lives, especially in our journey of faith, success is an unavoidable test. It reveals the hearts of others and helps us more clearly see who truly loves and remains loyal to us. At the same time, success is also an opportunity for us to learn forgiveness and to walk faithfully in our trust in God. Remember, as Joseph showed us, advancement is not merely a reward for effort, it is a chance to demonstrate our character and our loyalty to God, even in the greatest of trials. Part 4. Through unreciprocated loyalty, when you give, but they don't return. In this life, there is an unavoidable reality that, when faced, leaves us choked with emotion. When you give all that you have, when you offer love, loyalty, and care, but in the end, you receive nothing in return but coldness and betrayal. This pain doesn't only exist in personal relationships, but can also appear in those that seem sacred and noble. It is precisely in these moments that we clearly see the true nature of loyalty and love, and we come to better understand the difference between genuine love and deception, between true loyalty and relationships built on personal gain. Loyalty, from the Christian perspective, is a sacred quality, a privilege granted by the divine to those who truly understand and love Him. However, this loyalty is not something that can easily be faked or pretended. It is an inseparable part of the character of those who follow Christ, for it was He who taught us to love, to be loyal, and to sacrifice for one another, just as He did for humanity. But when loyalty is not returned, when the ones we trust most turn away, the pain becomes even more intense. In those moments, we not only lose trust in people, but also wrestle with ourselves, with disappointment and heartbreak. One of the saddest and most painful stories in the Bible is the story of Judas Iscariot, the disciple who betrayed Jesus, even though Jesus had loved and entrusted him deeply. After everything Jesus had done for him, Judas betrayed him for 30 pieces of silver. This was not a simple betrayal, but a betrayal committed by someone Jesus had trusted, a man Jesus continued to love and teach. Jesus washed Judas's feet, shared the Last Supper with him, but when temptation and material gain came, Judas threw away everything that Jesus had given him. We can only imagine the agony Jesus must have endured, not only from Judas's betrayal, but from the absence of loyalty in the very world he came to redeem. This story, in many ways, reflects the cruelty and deception in human relationships, especially when one side remains loyal and loving but receives nothing but betrayal. Yet in this very betrayal, we also see the greatness and unconditional love of Jesus for humanity, because He never gave up His mission, even when betrayed and hurt. In today's modern world, we can easily see similar situations where loyalty is exploited and discarded. A close-to-home example is the story of Britney Spears, a world-famous entertainment icon. Throughout her career, Britney gave everything to music and to her fans, but in the difficult years of her life, when she faced personal struggles, society and the media turned their backs on her. She was taken advantage of, ridiculed, and received little to no support from the people around her, those who had once stood by her when everything was going well. In the midst of her crisis, she realized that the people she had given her loyalty and love to had now abandoned her. No one remained to help. This betrayal, though it occurred in the entertainment world, reflects a profound lesson about the nature of loyalty and sacrifice. When someone gives all they have but receives only betrayal in return, that is when the fragility and vulnerability of human relationships are truly felt. In those moments, we must face a harsh truth, that love and loyalty are not always reciprocated in the way we hope. Yet it is precisely then that we come to recognize the true value of loyalty, not because it is returned, but because it is a divine quality, unpretendable, and given by God to those who truly love and are willing to sacrifice. Another example that shows the lack of loyalty and the pain of betrayal from those we trust is the story of Simone Biles, the famous gymnast who faced severe criticism and rejection when she chose to withdraw from competitions at the peak of her career. Simone had faced immense pressure and workload, and when she decided to protect her mental health, she was attacked by fans and even fellow athletes. The very people she had dedicated and sacrificed so many years for failed to understand her decision and turned away from her in her time of need. This is a vivid example of how loyalty is not always returned, and sometimes we must endure solitude in the moments we most need support. In all these stories, from Judas to Britney Spears and Simone Biles, we see that loyalty is not something people can fake because it comes from above. Jesus himself taught us that even when betrayed and abandoned, our loyalty to God must never change. God does not abandon us, even when we don't receive the response we hope for. In these trials, we come to better understand the divine nature of loyalty and sacrifice, and we learn that even when others turn away, we must remain steadfast in our faith and loyalty to God, for He is the source of all true love and faithfulness. Part V. Through the inner turmoil. When someone steals your peace, there is something that not all of us recognize immediately. Sometimes our inner unrest is not caused by external circumstances, but by the people we interact with on a daily basis. These individuals may not intend to hurt us, but their behavior, their words, or even just their presence can disrupt the peace within our soul. This is not merely a psychological phenomenon. From a Christian perspective, such loss of peace may be a warning sign from the Holy Spirit, indicating that we are headed in the wrong direction or allowing negative influences to lead our hearts astray. The peace we experience in our spiritual life is not a simple feeling. It is not merely the absence of anxiety or stress, but a deep state that the Holy Spirit gives us when we live according to God's will. In fact, peace is one of the clearest signs that we are living in harmony with God. It is a peace that the world cannot comprehend, a peace that surpasses all circumstances, a peace that no one can take away, unless we allow others and external influences to disturb it. However, when that peace is disrupted, when our soul can no longer feel the stillness of the Holy Spirit, that is the moment we must pay attention and listen. Sometimes this inner unrest is not random or trivial. It can be a wake-up call from God, a sign that something in our life is not right, or that we are allowing a certain factor to draw us away from the peace God wants to give us. Just like when an alarm clock rings in the middle of the night, not to annoy us, but to wake us from deep sleep, it alerts us to something important we have been ignoring. In the Bible, the story of David and King Saul is a clear example of how peace can be lost when one is affected by another person. David, a man after God's own heart, anointed by God to be king, had to endure a long period under the threat and jealousy of King Saul. Even though David had done nothing wrong, his soul was troubled by the insecurity caused by Saul's actions. Saul, driven by jealousy and hostility, sought to harm David in every possible way, forcing David to flee and live in fear, not just because of the physical danger, but also because of the emotional torment caused by the irrationality of someone he had once served loyally. The period David spent in this inner turmoil was a long and challenging one, but it was also a time when he learned deeply about dependence on God. Although confused and shaken by Saul's evil acts, David never lost faith in the righteousness of God. Each time he faced threats, he turned to God in prayer, and God granted him a peace that no human could understand. In every circumstance, David maintained his faith and peace, regardless of what was happening around him. This proves that when we lose our peace, it is a reminder that we need to return to God, to find peace in Him, instead of letting outside influences cause us to lose our way. This story is not just about endurance. It is also a lesson in recognizing relationships that can damage our peace. Sometimes we fail to realize that certain relationships, whether with friends, colleagues, or even loved ones, can pull us away from spiritual peace. They may not mean to, but their lifestyle, words, or actions may cause us to drift and lose our closeness with God. In such times like David, we need to step away to find a safe space where we can continue to nurture our relationship with God and not be affected by others. Looking at the modern world, we can see that David's story is far from unique. In fact, many celebrities and even ordinary individuals have had to deal with the loss of peace due to the influence of others in their lives. Selena Gomez, a world-renowned entertainment star, has faced many challenges in her career and personal life. After years of unhealthy relationships and negative influences from friends and colleagues, she chose to walk away from those who were not helping her spiritual growth and mental health. This decision wasn't easy, but it was a necessary step for her to regain peace within herself and in her relationship with God. Her story shows that when relationships cause us to lose peace, sometimes separation is needed to restore inner strength and reconnect with the peace God wants to give. Similarly, LeBron James, one of the greatest athletes in the world, has had to deal with division in his family and friendships as his success grew. He had to remove relationships that caused internal conflict and did not contribute to his family's growth. Although this might have made him feel lonely and faced with difficult decisions, LeBron understood that peace in his family and soul was the most important thing. He could no longer allow disloyal people or toxic relationships to harm the peace in his life. From David's story in the Bible to modern-day examples like Selena Gomez and LeBron James, we see that spiritual peace is not something easily maintained in a chaotic world. Peace doesn't only come from external calm, it begins within as a deep connection with God. When peace is disrupted, it's time for us to pause and examine the relationships around us to see if something or someone is pulling us away from the peace God has given. Only by removing these negative elements can we truly find lasting inner peace, a peace that only the Holy Spirit can grant us. Part 6. Through your silence. When you stop responding, they reveal their true faces. In daily life, we constantly find ourselves in situations where we must communicate, respond, and act. We apologize, reply to criticism, or even try to please others to maintain relationships. However, there is a secret that few of us recognize. Sometimes silence is the most powerful tool to strip away the true nature of those around us. It is in that silence that hidden motives are brought to light, things we often fail to detect through spoken words or daily actions. And the most fascinating part is, when we stop responding, when we go quiet, that's when true relationships and even the truth about ourselves are fully revealed. In Christianity, we cannot overlook the image of Jesus Christ, especially during his darkest hours before Pilate, where he chose silence. When being judged by the governing authority, Jesus did not answer many of Pilate's questions. When faced with accusations from the chief priests and the Pharisees, he did not defend himself, did not explain, and spoke not a single word in protest. His silence was a profound demonstration of how silence can reveal something that words never could. The silence of Jesus was not weakness, it was an act of great power. He did not need to justify himself because he knew that truth would eventually be revealed, no matter how long it took. And in that moment of silence, the true nature of those standing against him, the envious, the deceitful, was laid bare. When there was nothing left to be said, their actions spoke on their own. And in his silence, Jesus showed the world that sometimes not reacting to slander and cruelty is itself a victory. What makes this silence so powerful is that it highlights one of the core values in a relationship with God: trust in the justice of the Lord. We do not need to protect ourselves with sharp words or reactive actions. If we live according to what God teaches, the truth will eventually come to light. Jesus demonstrated absolute trust in the Father, allowing his silence to become a voice of great strength, as those around him could no longer hide their true selves. The story of Jesus before Pilate is not the only example in the Bible where silence becomes a powerful weapon. In our lives, we are sometimes faced with situations where an emotional response might make things worse. But when we choose silence, when we don't react to provocation, injustice, or even insults, we allow that very silence to expose the motives of others without argument or rebuttal. Those who truly love you will remain in the quiet. Silence will not drive them away. On the contrary, it will deepen the relationship between you and them. Because in those quiet moments, you don't need to prove anything. Those who truly care about you understand that love does not have to be expressed through endless words, but through presence and peace in the silence. When you stop responding, they will stay, waiting for you, ready to walk with you, no matter how hard or challenging it gets. On the other hand, those who are not genuine will immediately be revealed when you go silent. They will no longer be able to maintain their fake facade when there are no reactions from you to sustain the relationship. They will walk away because for them, the relationship only exists when it benefits them, when they can control you through their words and actions. Your silence removes the pressure and the power they had to manipulate you, and that is exactly why they will not stay when you stop responding. In this silence, you will see the true nature of those around you, and that can be a crucial awakening for your life. This is not only true in the Bible, but also in modern life. One of Hollywood's famous stars, Zendaya, has shown that sometimes silence is the most powerful way to deliver a message. Throughout her career, she has chosen not to engage in public arguments or respond to unreasonable criticisms. She doesn't need to prove herself with sharp words. Through silence, she lets her actions and success speak for themselves. Her silence is not neglect. It's a strategy to reveal the true nature of her critics while highlighting her own dignity and integrity. Keanu Reeves, known for his quiet lifestyle, is also a testament to the strength of silence. He never seeks to flaunt his success or even react to criticism from the public. He lives simply, honestly, and maintains inner peace. Just like Zendaya, Keanu doesn't need to argue or prove anything. His silence reveals something clear, that true human worth does not come from loud words, but from a sincere and upright life. Both Zendaya and Keanu Reeves show us that when you are silent, you not only allow the truth to be exposed, but you also reveal your own character. You do not need to fight the world to maintain respect. Your silence will be your strongest rebuttal. While the world may be swept up in endless arguments, you, like Jesus in those moments before Pilate, can choose silence to express what words cannot: honesty, sincerity, and trust in God's justice. Silence is a powerful tool, and through that action, we can clearly see who truly loves and respects us and who only seeks to exploit the relationship. Silence is not weakness. It is a display of inner strength, of faith in God, and of loyalty that does not need to be proven through speech. When you stop responding, the fake ones will reveal themselves, and those who truly love you will stay as living witnesses to the true love you have found in God. Part 7. Through spiritual instability, when someone pulls you away from God. In this life, we cannot deny the fact that our relationships with those around us profoundly impact our relationship with God, especially when we begin to let those relationships become the source of spiritual instability. Wrong relationships can not only make us lose our direction in life, but they can also lead us frighteningly far away from God. In these moments, spiritual alertness becomes the most important factor in maintaining our faith and not getting lost in the temptations of the world. People who truly love you will never pull you away from God. They will be the ones who, when you're with them, make you feel closer to the Lord. Those who inspire a natural longing for prayer and holiness. They will help you maintain an intimate relationship with God, stir up in you a desire for sanctity, and renew your prayers each day. On the other hand, there are relationships that not only fail to bring you closer to God, but also pull you farther from Him, weakening your spiritual hunger and dulling your longing to live in God's presence. And this is not always easy to recognize in daily life. These kinds of relationships often begin quietly, like a gentle wave soothing the shore, but eventually they can shatter the sacred connection between you and God that you have built through years of faith. In the Bible, the story of Samson and Delilah is a classic example of how a wrong relationship can lead to spiritual weakness and the loss of one's connection with God. Samson, a man whose strength came not from muscles, but from a deep relationship with God, entered into a relationship with Delilah, a woman who was in truth his enemy. This relationship not only weakened him physically, but also spiritually, and ultimately severed his bond with God. Delilah did not love him, Instead, she sought to strip Samson of his divine strength through deception and betrayal. This story is not only a warning about relationships that can steer us away from our spiritual purpose, but it also reveals how we can sometimes lose our connection with God, a connection we once held firmly. Samson did not realize that this relationship was weakening his spirit and his holiness until it was too late. When Delilah cut his hair, he lost the divine strength God had granted him. What's noteworthy here is that Samson had been warned multiple times before Delilah's betrayal, but because of his love and longing for the relationship, he ignored God's counsel. Samson was a man of extraordinary strength, but his weakness lay in that wrong relationship, and that was what led to his downfall. This is a powerful lesson for us, not to let relationships in our lives draw us away from the presence of God. If we are not alert, those around us can cause us to lose ourselves and stray from the holiness we once yearned for. In modern society, we also see many examples among celebrities whose wrong relationships have led to their downfall and loss of direction. Demi Lovato, a famous music star, went through years of struggling with addiction and spiritual loss. She publicly shared that she was pulled into the wrong relationships and even made poor choices in friendships, which led her to lose herself and fall into the spiral of addiction. Demi didn't just lose her physical health, she lost her relationship with God. Without the right spiritual support, wrong relationships can gradually distance us from the sacred values that God has given us. Similarly, Miley Cyrus, another Hollywood star, once admitted that she had lost herself in unhealthy relationships. She shared that for a long time, she lived according to values and thinking that did not align with her faith. These unhealthy relationships pulled her away from God and caused her to lose herself. Miley's story is a clear example of how, when we are not careful, unhealthy relationships can make us lose our spiritual identity and drift away from the values God has entrusted to us. This issue is not exclusive to celebrities. In reality, in the lives of each of us, inappropriate relationships can be a root cause of spiritual instability. When you no longer feel the desire to pray, no longer experience peace in your soul, or even gradually feel distant from God compared to before, you need to be alert and examine the relationships around you. Sometimes the people you spend time with may be the very ones pulling you away from the sacred values you once held dear. True relationships, the ones that truly build and encourage our faith, will never leave us feeling weary or distant from God. On the contrary, they will make us want to be closer to Him, inspire us to pray more, and live more holy lives. These individuals not only love us, but they also guide us closer to God, helping us gain a clearer understanding of our divine purpose in life. When you find relationships like this, you will feel the peace and joy that God has given you because you know you are walking the right path He has laid out for you. Ultimately, the lesson we draw from the stories in the Bible and from real-life examples in today's society is that we must always stay spiritually alert and evaluate the relationships in our lives. Those who truly love you will never pull you away from God. They will be the ones who help you stay connected with Him and not allow negative influences to weaken your faith and holiness. When you find yourself in spiritual instability, that's the moment you must look at your relationships and ask, are they pulling me away from God? Remember, God is always near, but sometimes it is up to you to walk in relationships that bring you closer to Him, rather than letting the weakness in your soul pull you away from His presence. Conclusion: separation is a sign of love. In every believer's life, there are moments when we feel as if we've been left behind, stripped of relationships we once cherished. Perhaps it's in seasons of loss, when those around us slowly drift away, when once close connections fade, or when bonds we've built suddenly break apart. Yet what many fail to recognize is this: it is in these very moments that we can clearly witness God's love at work in our lives. This is not punishment, but rather a loving act from the Lord, shielding us from things that do not belong to Him. When God removes certain people or relationships we once considered essential, He is not taking something precious away from us. In reality, He is cleansing our hearts of things that no longer serve His divine purpose. He never desires us to lose what is truly good, those who genuinely love and support us in faith. Instead, what he removes are the hindrances, things that could obstruct our spiritual growth and intimacy with him. As Scripture teaches, God is a God of love, and he does not wish to see us suffer under unnecessary burdens. But he also knows that separation from what is not of him creates space for peace, holiness, and blessings that only he can give. One of the most profound lessons we learn from biblical figures is about separation. Think of the story of Abraham and Lot. On their journey, when the land could no longer support them both, Abraham willingly let Lot choose first, even offering the best land to his younger relative. In that separation, Abraham displayed deep trust in God's providence. Though his bond with Lot was meaningful, he knew that true blessing came from the Lord alone. Indeed, after Lot chose the fertile plains of Sodom, Abraham continued to receive divine blessings, and his relationship with God only grew stronger. Likewise, in our own lives, when important relationships fade or dissolve, we should not rush to sadness or disappointment. These separations may be God's way of protecting us from harmful influences, things that could stain the purity of our hearts. Hypocrisy, deception, and unhealthy attachments may hide under appealing appearances, but when we embrace the quiet solitude of separation, their true nature is eventually revealed. It is in these moments that we realize such relationships never truly served our spiritual growth. They only dimmed the light of God within us and caused us to forget our true purpose, to live for the glory of his name. Never regret when God removes things that do not come from him. These might be bad habits, toxic relationships, or distractions that make us lose direction. God does not take away our happiness. Rather, he clears the path so we can walk in peace, holiness, and strong faith. As Jesus himself said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life," John 14:6. When he removes what is not of him, he opens a new path, a bright road leading us into the truth and life he has prepared for us. Even in our modern world, these truths are reflected in the lives of contemporary believers. Consider someone like Selena Gomez, who faced many challenges in her relationships and career, yet chose to walk the path of healing and rediscovery in her relationship with God. Or LeBron James, who did not hesitate to distance himself from negative influences, instead choosing to build healthy relationships that support his stability and strength both in family and career. These individuals understand that to reach true prosperity in faith and life, we must be grateful for what God removes, knowing that such things were stepping stones drawing us closer to him. So when you face loss or separation, remember that it is God's loving hand at work. It is his protection from what may harm your spirit. God never takes away what is good. He only removes what does not belong to him, so you can step into a future filled with peace and blessing in his presence. Be thankful for what he has removed from your life, for those things were necessary to purify your heart, make you more genuine, and prepare you for the great blessings he has in store for you. With this message, we at Eternal Light thank you for spending time with us. We hope these reflections help you see that separation is not something to fear, but a part of God's perfecting work in every believer's life. Remember, when God removes what doesn't belong to him, he is preparing you for a fuller life, one rich in holiness and blessing. May you always walk in his light, and we look forward to seeing you in our next video.